get your attention? Okay, so I want to first of all thank everybody for coming to this celebration of the celebration of the life of Jonathan Baker Moorefield and in tribute to his life that we're going to put on here today. When we get started here, we're going to have a few remembrances and some stories about John. We are here for a celebration, but we're also here today because John is now missing from our life, and so I mentioned this at the other memorial, but we're all going to feel some grief over John, and that's good, because what that means is that we loved him, right? We wouldn't feel anything if we didn't love him. So, I really love John, and one thing that's become very apparent to me is I wasn't the only one. There's a lot of people here today that really love John, and everybody I know, they just, it's an outpouring of love for it. And I said that a bunch, so I'm gonna move on. I want to tell a little story. I first met John in 1972. We were both going to the Laurel School, and I was 11 and he was 9, and I wasn't really, in the habit of hanging out with 9-year-olds at the time. But John was kind of cool. He had like long hair, and liked music and stuff. And hey, he invited me to his house for Halloween that year. I remember this really clearly because, I'll be honest, I kind of had a crush on John's mom, Baker. She was really pretty. So, we went over there, and she's helping me. She teased my hair and put makeup on me, and I was just like, and I remember John, how he dressed up. Can anybody guess how John dressed? Dracula. It involved a top hat. Magician. Yep, he looked very dapper. He was a magician, and it looked like he had like some tuxedo or something. As always, John looked cool. Anyway, so over the years, we were in the same circles. We weren't like besties from the first of time, but we were friends. And then many years later, I would talk him into picking up whatever he was doing. I don't know what it was, but I said, John, we're putting Candy Cream back together. This is going to be the third version of the band, and we're going to do it in Kansas City this time. And by the way, you're coming out here with us. Okay, Jeff. So next thing I know, I got John out there with Michelle, who's at the time has a little Corey in her belly, although we didn't know he was Corey yet. And anyway, so we had a big time, and traveling around with John, and I enjoyed my time making music with him. I'm grateful to have had that chance. And then later on, we did some recordings, and then the band broke up. I ended up coming back to Tennessee. I think John stayed in Kansas City for a while and played with some people out there. And in fact, I think at least one of those people is here today and is going to play some musical tribute to John. Anyway, but then with the magic of social media, which I have mixed feelings about, but it did help me really connect with John again. But we went beyond the social media. We went old-fashioned and like talked on the phone, and I know, but and we've been pretty close here for the past several years, talking a lot. I don't know if some of you know me. You might notice I've lost a lot of weight, and I had some health issues earlier, and I had to start taking care of myself. But while I was working on that, John was a really good friend. Calling me almost every day for a while, saying, "Hey, how's it going? Working through this," and we just talk about all kinds of good stuff. The weird bands we like, and we listen to progressive rock, which drives most people crazy because there's too much going on. We're like, oh, listen to all that stuff. Anyway, I'm going to kind of wrap it up. I do want to say this here, that in our musical tribute today, in this tribute to John, we're going to hear a lot of people present their tribute to John in different ways. And one thing I've really come to learn about John is he would be cool with that. So that's all I have to say. I'm just going to wrap up saying that, again, I am grateful and thankful to have known John, to have such a good friend in my life, and had such a great musician to make music with. And I'm going to get Jesse up here next. Jesse, if you would come this way, it's safer.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And so for anybody coming up on the stage today, we're going to come up over here where the green lines are and the stairs and stuff. Unless you're going to play keyboards, and then you'll go that way.
Awesome. Well, I think that's how I'll start for sure. It's such an outpouring of love. Jeff and Bruce and Newland and everybody who contributed these beautiful images of John got me in the feels just a few minutes ago, and I kind of I'm going through these waves of kind of suppressing my emotion and letting myself feel, and I'm going to tell you, life is a series of moments, some more intense than others. One moment a few minutes ago is my brother handed me the notes from the memorial that I gave in Jackson, and then minutes before that, my sister Newland said, "Jesse, I know how you feel. If you got up there and you told the same thing you said in Jackson, it wouldn't be the same. It'd be sort of to cheapen it." And that's exactly how life is we have these moments, and we have our reflections, we have our memories. It's important not to let those moments be cheapened. So I'm really excited that Jeff talked about social media. I'm excited that Jeff talked about anxiety and allowing yourself to grieve, to feel these complicated emotions. But to memorialize John and to share with you as the littlest brother, a lot of people don't know that I exist. I'm the littlest brother. As odd as that is, I'm a big guy, I'm a little brother. John was 20 years my senior, at least, right? Something like that. And I would be in elementary school, and I had this understanding that I had a glam rock brother out there in clubs in Mississippi, and somewhere there's a party going on, and this big hair brother of mine is rocking hard. And that was always so exciting to me, There's always a party somewhere, and some of the most intense, most beautiful moments that I had was looking forward to those little vacations, those little drives through small towns, maybe getting a glimpse of my brother on a drum set in a club somewhere. And more than that, which I spoke to at the memorial in Jackson, is that I've been connecting to him even stronger since he's passed. Largely in thanks to my father, Bill, who kind of stuffs his emotions down, and it creates focus, it creates obligation, it creates a sense of duty. The nature of how John died, I had to do that, and I connected, I think, to my brothers and to John, because I'm very much a feeler. I vent. I'm always expressing. John had ways that he would express, that he would cope. And so this is what I was asked to share, are the 4 ways that John artistically expressed himself. So I'm sure you already know, we talked about magic. John was very precise. In fact, that's what my note says. It says, gentle, precision, and expression. Because I thought that was very unique. John, it's not that he would have this wild, chaotic expression. He was very precise. When Corey and I unpacked his drums, you know, it was beautifully set, this amazing drum kit that he had just perfectly, you know, put together, you know, just, hopefully you'll get to see photos of this thing, just how precise he was, how detailed he was. Precise, he was precise. With his magic, he was precise too. You know, one of my first memories was that thumb trick where, you know, the floating thumb, and my mind was blown trying to figure out how he did that thing. Again, with his magic, he was very precise. The third one's a little more obvious. He was an amazing painter. I mean, he really was one of my favorite painters. If you ever get to see any of his artworks, it's incredible. He could do photorealism, you know. And he extended that into his work doing prostheses. He made people whole again, which I think is one of the most fulfilling lines of work that a person can do. So here was the punchline at the memorial, if you would call it a punchline, is that fourth thing. What was his fourth thing? And it was silly faces, right? John really had the most incredible silly faces. And even, I mean, especially as a child, I appreciated every little tiny ounce, every moment I had with John. It wasn't that he would be doing this to a room full of people. You would just be across the table from him. You would just be at a cafe. You would be in his home, you know. He'd be on the recliner and he would just be entertaining you in those tiny moments. John really had this amazing ability to make you feel special. He was such a giving, beautiful, honest person. And what I want to extend to you is don't forget why you started expressing yourself. Don't forget the reason why you got into art. Don't forget the reason you turned to your music. In my case, I'm not musically creative at all, but I do acting and things like that. John was incredible, and he was an incredible influence on my life, and I'm sure on all of your lives as well. If you knew John, you were inspired by him. Those giving moments I will always treasure. Thank you so much, and thank you, Jeff, for allowing me to speak here today. So I think I'm bringing up the next speaker. Is that right? Or would you like to do that? Okay. So without further ado, I want to introduce my big brother, Matthew, another huge influence on my life. Matthew.
Well, thanks for saying that. Saying exactly what I said in Jackson was going to cheapen it, because that's exactly what I was going to do. So that's it for me. We did have a service in Jackson, and before that, I was pretty torn up. I met John in 1977. We were in a band. No, we weren't in a band. I was born. He was changing my diapers. Where's Baker? Is it okay to talk about the nickname? Okay. Yeah, my sister and my brother nicknamed me Mustard Bottom. They kept calling me that up until recently, and I'm 41 now, so I wish it wasn't entirely untrue. So they welcomed me with open arms when I was born in '77, and a few years later, John showed me his first magic trick, or my first magic trick, not his first. Where you have like the red spongy balls that disappear from one hand and appear in the other, and all this, and I was in awe. And he kept doing magic tricks that were more and more impressive. And I bought a magic kit, and I wanted to do magic, and I wanted to be like him. And so I did. I kept doing magic, and even to this day, when I see a magic show, I think about him every time I see magic. A few years after that, my sister brought me to one of John's gigs, right? And I want to say it was like 1982. 83, I had a Michael Jackson jacket, like the zippered beat it jacket, and I was the only one in this club that was like 21 and up, that was like 6 or something, and I remember he was playing drums, but he was singing most of the songs as well, and my sister and I were dancing right in front of the stage, like, I don't know, twirling each other around and stuff like that. I just remember looking up at him and going, man, this guy is cool, right? Like Johnny Bang, and I wanted to play the drums, and so I made my mom buy me a snare drum, and I played in the elementary school band. Then in 19 '86. We got a phone call from, I think it was Kansas City, and John told my brother and I that Corey had been born, and that we were like the world's youngest uncles or something like that. You know, I was 9 and Jesse was 4. Those guys were more like brothers than Jesse and I. You know, John may have been more of a father figure to both of these guys, more of a brother to me. But it was cool, right? I was 9, Jesse was 4, my sister Newland was 2, right? You know, and then, you know, up until recently, John and his wife Trish and her son Kyle and myself and the girlfriend went to, they came out to California. We went to Six Flags Magic Mountain, and it was really cool. I had like the hookup at Six Flags. We didn't have to wait in any lines or pay for anything. We got everything for free. But the first ride we got on was the Batman ride. And you're like dangling, but they got these things on you, and there's these loops and these twists and these turns. And we all get off the ride, and we're like, yeah, we're like high-fiving and stuff. And I look over at John, and he's like, bathroom. And so I like grab him, and I'm like pointing him away from me, you know, like towards the bathroom. And so the rest of the trip, he just sat on the bench, and we'd all take turns sitting with him. But he spent the whole day, like 10 hours, just watching us ride rides and feeling sick, you know, the whole day. And that was John, you know. I mean, he was the nicest guy in the world. I met a lot of people in Mississippi that loved him, and he's got so many best friends, right? You know, he's one of those people that you don't like get to know him gradually. I think Jeff said that when we were out at that Pelican Cove place in Jackson. He goes, you don't gradually get to know John. You're just immediately like best friends with him, right? You know, he just makes you at ease and comfortable. And he's just the kindest, most gentle person that I've ever known. And obviously he was, you know, struggling with some stuff. And so I know we all struggle with stuff, and there's people in this room that probably have a lot of serious problems right now. But when you're looking at that mountain ahead of you, you know, when you're looking at that wall, and you know, you've got, you know, taxes or bills or relationship problems or work problems or health issues or family members that have died, I want you all just to take a moment and take a step back and just do the most elemental, basic thing that you can do in life, and that's just breathe. Just take a moment and breathe. And I'm going to do that today, tomorrow, and every day for the rest of my life in John's honor. Because I know right now he's here on earth. I mean, there's been some weird things that have happened that are unexplainable. My sister's son, Sam, is like when we were at the hotel in Jackson, we were at a Best Western, and he had a dream that John came to his window and said everything's going to be okay. He's heard him, you know, and this is a 12-year-old, and it's not like a 12-year-old story. He like was really upset about this because he felt like it wasn't okay, and we had to explain that it was. Amanda, Corey's wife, has also had a similar situation. I've had a similar situation. Baker and Coco went out to where they found John, and there were these butterflies circling them, these big yellow butterflies. I live in Long Beach, California, and there aren't any butterflies in my neighborhood. I live like real close to the beach, and I saw a big yellow butterfly flying around in my kitchen the other day. Newland and Becky have seen these yellow butterflies appearing, and so and more than that, like before we went to Jackson and I was in California, I had like the energy of one person. When I got back, like people at work are like, what's going on with you? Like, you're like working like two people. And it's because I think I've got the energy of him with me, part of his energy. And if I didn't believe, you know, 100% in an afterlife before, I believe 100% now. He's here. He's probably somewhere in this room, probably drinking a Bud Light or something. If you see one floating around, that's him. And eventually he will get up to heaven once he kind of, lets everybody know that everything's going to be okay. And he'll be up in heaven, making Robin Williams laugh, showing Houdini a magic trick that he had never come up with, and rocking with David Bowie and Jim Morrison, which is kind of weird because I said that in Jackson, and I was just staying at a hotel in Atlanta, and the Ardmore, and I just saw a picture of the room and said, oh, I like that hotel, it's in the right part of town. Well, there were all these paintings of these musicians on the wall, and this was in my room with Jim Morrison and David Bowie, Michael Jackson, and Dolly Parton, who's still alive, living somewhere in Pigeon Forge or somewhere around here. I guess longevity, you have more longevity if you're part silicone or something, I don't know. But he's up in heaven rocking out, right? And the whole time he's in our ears whispering, hey, everything's gonna be okay. Just breathe, okay? Thank you.
Okay. I'm not happy to be here because it's not a good time for anybody, but I want to say thank you to everyone in this room because, he was a lucky guy, and we're a lucky family, and, this wasn't supposed to happen, in my opinion. This was something that was not, in the divine plan, but I guess it was. The elephant in the room is anxiety and depression, and, John was born with anxiety, and he, over time, started to medicate with alcohol, and it just got to a point where he woke up in the morning and he felt so bad and anxious, and he had to start drinking in the morning. And we know Jonathan. We know that this was a spirit and a person and someone who was empathic. He knew how you felt before you knew how you felt. He could love. His capacity to love was beyond the scope of one person. At least 15 people in Jackson told me he was their best friend, and I believe it. I think he had more bromances than anybody I've ever known in my life. And for me and my mom, and Matt and Jesse and Jean, his stepmom, and Corey, and his grandsons here, William and Grayson, and my dad and Nancy and Becky, our sister, and we're just so grateful for the outpouring of love and for the support and the generosity of Jeff Comas and Steve Drevick and Bruce Feeney and everyone in this room. So I just want to first say thank you, and I know a lot of people in this room, so I love you. But I also, if Jonathan loved you, I love you. And so I'm gonna just introduce this song a little bit. I'm not gonna lose my shit right yet. I want to say a couple of things, one more. John was in Mensa. I don't know if people knew that about Johnny. He was that brilliant. When he was, I think, 9, he taught himself magic. And he was a professional magician. And he would go to 12-year-olds' birthday parties and do magic, and they loved him. He would go into his room and teach himself drums. I think if it weren't for George Hooks, who got him kind of more formulated into the real technical aspect of drumming, John was self-taught for a long time. John did art. John was a sculptor. He taught himself how to sculpt when he was 9 years old, or maybe even younger. We had little busts of Abraham Lincoln all over the house. You sit on him, it's like, and he was pure magic. He made beauty. His life was about making beauty. His life was about loving other people, and I think he was probably kind to a fault, because at the end he felt so much, and he felt other people's stuff. He wasn't taking care of himself. And it happened within a 4-month period of time, and it went very fast. And so that's why, I'm still in the shock and disbelief phase, which is why I can still talk. But my brother Jesse mentioned this about John being an anaplastologist. He was actually known as one of the best in the country, And people came from all over the country to be with him, and he would sit down with them, and he would let people know they're going to be whole and human again. And he would make the verisimilitude of what their missing limb was. He would like take a cast of their right arm and flip and reverse it and paint it so perfectly so that the left arm was perfect, and they were whole again. And that's what John's life was for 18 years. He put himself through, his mom put him into college when he was 33, 34. He got an art degree when he was 34 and became the art director at this place. So a lot of people don't realize that he had this incredible, beautiful life. He has 2 grandsons. He had, he was pure magic up until the end. So he was also still a musician, and I'm a musician too, and I live in Austin, Texas. And in Austin, there's this really amazing producer named Mark Hallman, and Mark Hallman was Carole King's producer and music director for 10 years. And he also worked with Oasis, and he's a drummer. And he did most of the drumming on the record that we were working on. And I said, I can't do a record without having John Moorefield on this record. And the producer was incredulous. He's like, no sibling, is coming in here. And I said, no, this is John Moorefield. I want you to have him on the record. And John had actually kind of gotten really nervous kind of at the end with music, and he was kind of anxious on stage. He had stage fright for the first time in his life. And when he found out this guy that Mark worked with, Oasis, he's like, I can't do that, And I'm like, you're coming on my record. You're gonna be in Austin. You're coming down. I flew him down, and so this incredulous producer didn't want another drummer on my record, and then my brother, who's this magical man, this beast on a Terry Bozzio kit, for like 30 years, and knew everything about drumming and was masterful. They're both feeling kind of nervous about it, and I knew everything was going to be perfect. But the first kind of few measures that Jonathan started to drum, Mark's jaw just dropped. And he looks at me, and I'm like, and Mark said, this is like a world-class, amazing, beautiful man said about Jonathan, that he's not only playing it as well as I'm playing it, he's so in the pocket, he's so masterful, he's playing it better than I would have played it. And from that moment on, my nervous brother was Mr. Extraordinary. And it was just one of those spirited days where it was something that, and it was the last time we ever recorded together, and I'll be strong. It was the last song on the record, the last song we ever made, and it was a coda. And those of us in music know that a coda is the last movement of a piece, the last movement of a musical piece. And it was really kind of sucking so hard that I thought, this is the last song, the last thing we're going to do, and it's a coda. And then I realized that I'm going to have my brother's music with me forever, that we're all going to have Jonathan's music forever. All the musicians that are here today, we all have Jonathan forever. Jonathan is on many recordings. I asked Mark, I said, do we have more, drum tracks of John? And so I'm going to write a new song with just John's drum tracks. And so love is eternal, John's eternal. And so I was just going to play the song that we did together, that last song that's on the record. And it's called All This Walking. It's about personal freedom, which is also something that was heartbreaking for me for a while. But I know that he's free now, and I know that he's with us. Matt and Jesse said it, and I feel it. And it's called All This Walking Coda, and it fades out into an instrumental, and it's just John and me singing. And I'm playing piano. Mark Hallman is playing the guitars, and John's playing the most badass, cool drums you'll ever hear. So thank you.
swear by all this walking, if it would one day make me free.
That's really chilling, huh? So I have to take a moment here to, gotta kill some time while the technical thing happens. But yeah, that piece is beautiful, and you know, we know John is a great drummer and musician and the artist, and one of the things that John also was that we don't really talk about much, but he was actually a really good singer, and he's a great harmony vocal. I mean, I heard his voice there, and it's so chilling for me. He's blending so nice with you, and then, you know, the tasteful drum work. It's, wow, just another reminder. So are we ready? Are we queued? Okay. While I'm here, I did want to thank the Open Chord, which has done a great job helping us put on this event, and they've had to deal with some of their own issues trying to get us up, and really appreciate their efforts. And I also wanted to thank Steve Drevick, who put together this short film that we're about to see. So we're going to have some audio, and we'll have some stuff in the monitors around the place. So please watch, and then we're going to have some live music tribute right after that.
Can I read the foreign language? This is going to be the Shard Shuffle. Yes. Shard Shuffle, folks.
Okay, so is there a way that you can fix this so that you must send it back to us no more?
Well, what you need to do is you need to take it and you need to put it in your bottom. And
Does it go on the toilet again? One more time.
You rock my world. You are the world rock king. I like you. I'm gonna get a Guinness Queen. I'm gonna make you a friend. I'm gonna make you a Guinness gift, a finger, a button pants. That's what I want. And you get me in an old man old. That's what I want. I want you with me. So I like.
But I'm really scared right now about what's going on with the game, right? Being a little barefoot.
Give us a demo of the shard walk. Oh yeah. And your destination is?
Charlie.
Action. Hang on.
The song you're about to hear is called 1,000 Miles Away. I wrote it when I was traveling around the country back in the mid-'80s with the Candy Cream Band, and we recorded it later with myself on guitar, Kevin Snowden on lead vocals and keyboards, and the great Jonathan Baker Moorefield on drums and harmony vocals. When you listen, you can really hear John's voice in the backup vocals, and you can really hear Jonathan's creativity come through in the drum work, especially the really nice hi-hat and cymbal work and the tom-tom work. It's really nice. I hope you enjoy it.
waiting for this moment to be free.
So if you don't know what this is, it's called a harp guitar. And my poor gear widow wife Laura has learned that about 10 or 12 years ago, even though I still love guitar, don't get me wrong, I started getting a little bit like, okay, I kind of figured out guitar, maybe I should start doing some other stuff. So I started out with buying some crazy instruments, and sometimes it's something really expensive, like the Chapman stick or the harp guitar. Sometimes it's something simple. But anyway, this is one of my little experiments, and I got the Chapman stick, and if you don't know what it is, that's okay. It's a complicated instrument that thinks it's half piano and half guitar. And I thought, wow, that was really hard to learn. The harp guitar, that's got to be easier because it's a guitar and I already play that. But it was harder than I thought, so it kind of sat around for about 2 years, and then I started writing a piece. I said, and by the way, you may not know this about me, but I went back to school after being on the road with John and went back and studied composition. So I'm a composer. And so usually when I get a new instrument, I write something. And so I started writing this piece of music, and I've been looking for a title for this piece. And I didn't have a title until very, very recently. But I knew when I found out about John and that this event was going to happen, that I wanted to play this piece for him because it reminds me of John in certain ways, in that in a way it's very simple, but I went to great lengths to make it complicated. This is called, as you told, a harp guitar, and actually it's some really simple stuff. But I came up with these crazy ways so the notes bleed over each other, like as if you were playing a harp or a piano with a sustain pedal down or something. Now, you probably didn't really want that much technical information, but I felt it important to tell you this because of the complexity, the apparent simpleness. I mean, John on the surface, simple guy, everybody loves him, he's happy, pleasant. But he was really a complex, multifaceted man. And I was talking to one of John's other longtime friends, and he told me, he said, well, John's nickname was Little Cabbage. That's what his mom used to call him when he was a kid. And I said, that's it, Rick. And he's like, what? What's it? And I'm like, that's the name of the piece. So he doesn't know that he gave me the name of the piece, but I officially dedicate this. And by the way, this is what you would call, I dedicate this piece, and this is what you would call a world premiere performance. In other words, this has never been performed ever before in front of people. Okay. That didn't make me nervous saying that. All right, so hopefully we got some sound here. Messed up the mic too much. Oops, need Arnold Schwarzenegger again. Hook it up. We got some sound there? All right. Nothing up the sleeve. But the sleeve's got to go. I didn't have time to learn any magic. But I have often talked about how a musician's hand has to be faster than the ear. Little Cabbage. Thank you very kindly. Little Cabbage, dedicated to Jonathan Baker Moorefield. If you guys don't know Todd, you probably do, but Todd is high school buddy of mine and one of the most creative songwriters ever to come from the town of Knoxville, Tennessee. Probably the most prolific. How many songs do you write a day, Todd?
Whatever's required.
Whatever's required. He's a man who steps up to the job. Okay.
So I met John at Bearden High School, which I attended most days. Certainly not the majority, but most. And that was in the 70s. And for those that weren't alive in the 70s, American high schools were a little looser back then. Very loose in our case. And there was a class called Solo and Ensemble, which Mr. Francis, if anybody knew Mr. Francis, yep. Mr. Francis basically created this class and said, you go in a room and play music, and I'll come get you at the end of the year and give you an A. I went, this is the greatest high school in America. And guess who was in that class? John Moorefield. And in the 70s, I could play the first 40 seconds of any Kiss song. I'm up to about a minute deep. And John could play the whole song. So we were all kind of in awe of him. They say you should play with people that are better musicians than you. With John, that was the case very clearly, immediately, for all of us. And it was just a joy to get that opportunity to play without any rules or any expectations with a great soul for an entire year. It's not everybody gets that lucky. So this is a new one. It's called It's Hard to Lose. It's hard to lose a drummer. In the middle of the summer. It's hard to lose a drummer anytime. It's tough to lose a brother, a friend, a son, or any other. There's no place to take cover, but you try. Yeah, you can go ahead and make a set list. Pretend the world will follow. But the future's got its own plan. That's the part that's the hardest for me to swallow. There's nothing to do but keep on playing. Appreciate the thoughts and those that are praying. And all the kind words they're saying. We'll get each other through. We'll get each other through. It's hard to lose a drummer in the end of the summer. You can't find a sub for that. Who'll help us now keep the time? Thank you.
So, my brother Matt mentioned a little bit about the synchronicity and all the coincidence that we've been experiencing since John's passed, and a lot of the beautiful things that have happened, and a lot of it is kind of spirit-based, because I'm 100% convinced that I've experienced Jonathan's spirit, and a lot of my friends have experienced it. I know you all have experienced it. People in my family have experienced it. I learned that John wasn't on the earth in an email from a total stranger while I was on the jetway coming onto an airplane. And it was that little piece of metal that's between these little flimsy jet planes when you get into the little planes. And it was that little area right there where I'm reading this email from this guy actually who forwarded something. Didn't even say anything like, "I'm sorry your brother's gone." He just said something that the newscaster had said about what they discovered. And my heart completely stopped right there. And all I could say is, "Dear God, get me back to my seat, because I don't want my parents to bury two of us right now, because there's like 10 feet drop and this little flimsy railings and this little piece of metal while I'm getting onto the plane." And I got onto the plane, and I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I just learned this beautiful man, this magic man, was no longer in our life. And I had my phone on airplane mode, and the plane was delayed, and I took my phone out of airplane mode, and in that very instant that I took it out of airplane mode, my brother Matthew called me, and he said, "I'm sorry." And it did two things, and one was what I didn't want to believe was actually real, but secondly, having the touchstone of my brother and the beautiful spirit of his telling me, that we lost John, it put the humanity back into me. And I knew I had a long trip home, and I was on this plane, and I was crying so hard, like, and the people to the left of me got up and went to another place on the plane, and the shirt that I had with me was soaking wet because and we're leaving out of Charlotte in a storm, and we get up to the part where the troposphere or the stratosphere, when you're 7 miles above the earth, and it was the area where I'm convinced right now it's the space between land and heaven. Because once we got to this area, the sky became this tinfoil orange and purple and reds and yellows, and it was the most magical sky I'd ever seen. And I was seeing the little profiles of all the little sculptures of Abraham Lincoln that Jonathan made, and I was feeling so good, and it was very strange. And John went missing we found out John was missing on my mother's birthday. And I was with my mom, and we, didn't want to believe that he was gone and missing, but we thought he was just kind of taking a break. Just needing some space, getting away from the harpies, the people who were saying, come to Knoxville, come to Austin, come to California, do all this stuff. And that night, August 30th, on her birthday, Mom had a dream that John was gone. And I had a dream that John was in golden light, and that I could hear his laughter, and he was saying, "I'm okay." And what we didn't know in retrospect was that we were being visited by his spirit. So when I was on that plane, we went through the most beautiful skies I've ever seen, and I've flown a lot, and we went through this golden light, and it was my dream. And I heard Jonathan's voice in my head, and it was so real and so pure, and he said, "It's okay, Noonie, it's okay." And I wasn't alone on that plane anymore, and I landed, and when I got back to Austin, everything was in one eye and out the other. I couldn't read anything, I couldn't talk to anybody, I couldn't do anything that This is my baby nephew William. This is John's grandson William, and John's son Corey, and Grayson is somewhere around here as well. I hope this mic isn't too loud, but I got back to, is the mic too loud? Is it too loud? Got back to Austin and everything was just, a flurry and nothing mattered. I didn't care. I wasn't answering. Everything was in one eye and out the other. But what was capturing me and getting my attention almost every hour, like whenever I would look at something on the news or something that a friend had or something posted, it was a rainbow. And everyone said they were feeling John's spirit when they were seeing these rainbows. And then this drummer just randomly posted a double rainbow, and I thought, that's cool. That's like the double bass drum that John always had, and all these concentric circles of the Terry Bozzio kit with the 400 pounds of mounted toms and 30 zildjian cymbals and stuff. Then we were having like a delusional, were we all having like this delusional collective thought that John's, manipulating the universe for us. And it occurred to me, John is like in total concert with, the Deus Ex Machina. I probably mispronounced that. My mom's going to correct me later, but Deus Ex Machina. Did I say that right? I don't know. And just the powers that are higher than us, the higher powers. And John's in total harmonious, melodious, syncopated, synchronized, power-mongering, universal spirit that is the butterflies that we're seeing and the double bass drum rainbows and all of that. And so our sister Becky saw a yellow butterfly in her garden. And my mom saw one where John had passed away separately, and they both knew it was John's spirit. It's reminding them that he's okay and that he's still with us. So I wrote a song called the Double Bass Drum Rainbows and the Yellow Butterfly. And if anyone, if I can hear your all's voices, if you feel like singing with me at any time, we can do 100-part harmony. Just please sing with me. I don't care if you're not a singer. Just whatever you feel, if you want to do that.
butterflies. Charlie Chaplin in the rain, with you. Molded sculptures made of clay, of you. The double bass drum, rainbows and the yellow butterflies. It's not too long, no, it's not too high. Superman. It's not too loud, no, it's not too wide, no, for the music man. Double bass drum, rainbows, and the yellow butterfly. Wanna sing with me? Double bass drum, rainbows, yellow butterfly. Everybody singing. The double bass drum, rainbows, and the yellow butterfly. The double bass drum, rainbows, and the yellow butterfly. Sorry, I didn't have enough. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. I'm Candy, and I had the privilege of being in 2 rock and roll bands with John Baker Moorefield. Long time ago, we were Candy Cream and the Wet Dream. And then just a few years ago, we got back together, and I was Sam Murphy. Some of y'all know Sam Murphy, and you've seen pictures up here of this thing right here. This is Jonathan Baker Moorefield, Sam Murphy, and me. And we were Shambolic System, and this is all we got done. Sam died before we got it put out, so Jonathan and I did it. And there's a big table full of them back there. Jonathan would want you all to have it. He's rocking your face off on there as always.
Let's chant. Let's go like a show.
So I wrote a sweet little ballad, and I was gonna sing a sweet little ballad for John and blah blah blah. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna send my brother off in style. So Jeff asked me the name of this tune, and I said it's the 12-bar bluesy and A for John. He said, no, it needs a real title. So I'm like, okay. My husband helped me out there. Hey, Bo. He said, it's called the Johnny B. Blues. So that's what we're gonna give you now. And we don't know who's doing a solo win, so I'm just gonna point at them and then.
Ready to go?
Wow, what a great group of guys. I am so lucky right now. All right, Jonathan, we love you. This is for you, brother.
Let's do it like 5, 4, 1, 5 to come in.
Okay, sounds good.
Somebody nod at me when you want me to sing.
Does that mean?
Give me a sing tempo.
And always been a damn fine man. And if he was your friend, yo, he was too blue till the end. Well, he can bang the drums on the night and day, never want the show to end. Take it to bed. Shine his light on us, to shine for just a little while. Yeah, Johnny I hope you like that.
All right. Well, boy, that was fun. That was fun. I do want to tell a story before we do this next song about how I met John Moorefield. Chris. I want to tell a story about how I met my friend John Moorefield. In 1986, I was living in Kansas City with Jeff Comas in a little yellow house. And he got a new drummer for his band, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, John," actually it might have been like this, "Hey, John." He said, "I got a new drummer, and is it okay if they crash at our place until he finds a place to live?" And I said, "Well, absolutely." And so that's the day I met John Moorefield. But the kicker was he brought his wife Michelle with him also, and Michelle was pregnant with Corey. And today's the first day I ever met Corey and actually spoke to him. So I said I knew you before you were born, but today's the first day I met him. And we played in different bands. And then when I put a band together in Kansas City, I think you've seen this promo shot. That's Johnny and I in one of our promo shots. And when I moved down here to Knoxville with some friends, I needed a roommate, so I moved in with Johnny too. And it was just a couple of blocks away from his mom's house. So I remember when I met Baker Moorefield the first time, I remember thinking, she really is as pretty as Jeff Comas said this whole time. So, how are you, Baker? Good to see you again after all these years. You know, what I've heard from everyone that speaks here today is how much Johnny loved everybody and how everybody loved him. And that word love is what I hear over and over and over. And all of those qualities of John that we all love. And I wanted to share with you just really quick. I have to put on my glasses for this. I want to share with you, as we speak of love and how much we loved Johnny and how much Johnny loved everybody here, I want to share with you what I think the greatest book in the world says about love. It says this, and think about John when we read this. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, and love is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. And the Bible says love never fails. And I think about John that I haven't seen for so long, and I've just loved him so much, and everyone in this room loved him so much. But you know, God loved him even more than we did. And we're all going through a little bit of loss right now. And what I want to encourage you all before we play this next song is not to focus on the loss of John Moorefield, but let's focus on how much we loved Johnny and how much he loved us and how much God loves us all.
Amazing shine, but God who called me here below will be forever mine.
Hey, thank you, Neil, for that touching tribute. Yeah, so you probably know this, but back here we have Corey Moorefield on the drums. Corey Moorefield, who John Cormack and I met when he was still inside Michelle's tummy. And this would be my first time playing live with him. We got to practice. It was a lot of fun. And we did discover the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it?
To find a solution for what I feel inside. Whoa, come on and show me. Take me higher than the birds up in the sky. Whoa, come on and show me. Take me higher than I've ever been in my life. Take me home, take those blinders off of me. Yesterday's gone forever. Daddy with a good plan.
Thank you so much. Hey, George, why don't you bring some of your drums up here and bring the little drums, if George can hear me, George.